Good morning and welcome to the Avenue Uniting Church in Blackburn, Victoria, meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. My name is Rod Pepiot and I'm the Minister of the Word in the congregation here. Today our reflection picks up the fact that we are in the middle of Reconciliation Week in Australia. A focus when we think particularly about the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. We're also today, a little bit later, we'll be celebrating the Sacrament of Holy Communion. We will also, the area behind me is empty at the moment because in a little while it's going to have some young musicians sitting there and leading us in our service. I want to read to you, continuing in the story of where we've been over the last few weeks here, excuse me, from John's Gospel, chapter 17. Sorry, that won't go away. Now it will. Where we've been looking at the story of Jesus and his disciples at the Last Supper, and told in a very large chunk of John's Gospel. Today we're reading from John chapter 17 from verse 20 on, and it's a prayer of Jesus styled as a kind of farewell address in John's Gospel. And the prayer that John records, or John tells us, has these words of Jesus praying for his friends. I ask not only on behalf of these, but also on behalf of those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one. As you, Father, are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world might believe that you have sent us. The glory that you've given me, I have given them, so that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, that they may become completely one, so that the world will know you have sent me and have loved them, even as you have loved me. Father, I desire that those also whom you have given me may be with me where I am, to see my glory, which you have given me because you loved me before the foundation of the world. Father, righteous Father, the world does not know you, but I know you, and these know that you have sent me. I have made your name known to them, and I will make it known, so that the love with which you have loved me may be in them, and I in them. There's a lot to unpack in that particular passage. I want to add to it. I might mention that I'm not going to be able to unpack it all today. But I'd like to add to it a contemporary reading of grace, which is one of our practices here at the Avenue. We read a biblical story and then a contemporary reading. And this one is a very short one by the late Rachel Held Evans, a young woman who left us far too early in the United States. She said these words: Jesus invites us into a story that is bigger than ourselves, bigger than our culture, bigger even than our imaginations. And yet we get to tell that story with the scandalous particularity of our particular moment and place in time. We are storytelling creatures because we are fashioned in the image of a storytelling God. May we never neglect the gift of that. May we never lose our love for telling the tale. We are storytelling creatures because we're fashioned in the image of a storytelling God. I've been thinking a lot about that statement of Rachel's this week. We are storytelling creatures because we are fashioned in the image of a storytelling God. And I've been thinking about it for a couple of reasons. One, because, as I mentioned, this is Reconciliation Week in our nation. And part of reconciliation is listening to the stories of others. In the national context, it means Indigenous Australians and all other Australians listening carefully to each other's stories and responding with grace and compassion. And one of the ways I've done that this week is to look again to the book which each of us walk past when we come into church on Sundays. It's this book called Our Mob, God's Story. It features Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders sharing in words and art their stories of God with them. It contains descriptions of the artwork by the artists, and I'm just sort of picking a few at random as I talk about it here. Now you'll see a lot of the dot paintings, but you'll also see very different other styles. And each of them, this one's called Resurrection Morning by Daphne Davis. This one's called Christian Story. And if I come across, you can see the author here. Charmaine Naparula Brown, who is an artist born with Down syndrome. They're done by Indigenous artists, as I said, and I love the way that each piece of art shows a different way of painting and stories. And it reminds me that although the dot paintings are very important, there's much more to Indigenous art than simply dot paintings. And I love the way that the artists paint that makes me think differently about Bible stories I know well. Even the simple act of depicting a biblical character as black, as Indigenous, and framing their story, framing their image within the Indigenous settings, makes me think differently, makes me question and wonder about the stories in different ways. And they get me to imagine the stories all over again. Excuse me. Reconciliation is a big word, and reconciliation is big. It understands that the relationship between Australia's Aboriginal people of the last 60,000 plus years and the people who've settled here in the last 200 years has been pretty tough. Beyond that, though, it invites us to listen to each other's stories, to find a place of deeper coming together. And for me, that sits in the same sort of context as the gospel story I read earlier, where Jesus prayed for his friends and those who would follow them, us by the way, that we might be one. Not the same, not agreeing on everything, but together and listening to each other's stories and responding in grace and compassion. Not the same, but not all that different either, because the stories are all of humanity. We are storytelling creatures, says Rachel Held Evans, because we're fashioned in the image of a storytelling God. The second way in which that comment has been with me this week is to do with a book that I'm rereading as part of my daily discipline, and I forgot to bring it with me. Storytelling, Imagination and Faith by William Bosch. I read it many years ago and I'm really appreciating reading it second time round. William Bosch draws heavily on our Jewish faith traditions of story to invite curiosity and imagination to surprise and challenge what we think we know, to remind us of our sacred roots and our connections with all life in God. Those who've heard me speak more than about 3 times will know that that's how I understand a parable, that it's not designed to make things less complex, but to make the listeners and the readers think and be curious. Like Rachel Held Evans, William Bosch reminds us that before there were ideas of Jesus as God, before there were concepts of God as Trinity, before there were doctrines and formulas, the people who loved Jesus, who shared his history, shared their memories in story. And that sent me thinking about the stories that surround what we do today, sharing together in Holy Communion. Maybe it was something like this as they gathered. Remember when we sat with the Master at the table the night before he died? What he told us? That he wasn't going to be with us? He told us to remember him when we eat together and when we drink wine. Remember that? Remember how he said he'd help us to remember when we did that would help us to remember all that he was about, and it would help us to love each other like he said he loved us. Do you remember what he said about God being with us in spirit after he was gone? What did he mean, do you think? Well, I think he was trying to tell us we'd be all right, even without him. I think he was giving us a job to take up where he left off. All those stories he told us, like that one about the Samaritan who looked after that fellow that got beaten up. Who saw that coming? What about all the things he did? I believe that it was as Jesus' friends told these stories that they began to realise they could go on without Jesus, and they were able to take up their calling and follow his way. William Bosch put it like this: when people are in a difficult position, the only way out, so to speak, is to imagine other possibilities and alternatives. It is the imagination that gives birth to hope, and it is the story that is imagination's vehicle. To come back once more to Rachel's story, or Rachel's words that have shaped me in this thinking. We are storytelling creatures because we are fashioned in the image of a storytelling God. Friends, may we tell stories even when we face challenges that encourage us and encourage each other to look forward in hope, to raise our eyes and to find ourselves each day once more in the story of God, in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen. Blessings.